So I'm not a chef, but I love cooking, and I've always wanted to have a cooking show. So without further ado, I present to you Hood Rat Kitchen, starring me, Eversad Juice. In today's episode, we're gonna be making my Grandma Rose's homemade bannock recipe. This is the pilot episode, so if I can get 50 likes on this video, then I'll shoot another episode. So bannock is a native fried bread. It can be served up savory or sweet. It can also be fried or baked like me. Today, we're going to be using the fry method. But before we begin, let's do a quick fit check. For this particular recipe, I chose to go with Under Armour compression pants along with a Montreal Elite hockey jersey. The reason why I'm dressed like an off-season professional athlete is, well, this recipe calls for milk and flour, so you want to be lightweight and maneuverable, as to avoid any sort of potential mess. You could also wear protective eyewear if you want, but that's optional. This is how you want to dress when you're about to make a mess. Alright, now let's get to this dough. You want to start with roughly 3 cups of flour and about 1 tablespoon of baking powder. I say rough estimate because you're probably going to fuck up the measurement anyways. It's hard to properly measure powder like flour unless you're like weighing it or something. You'll see later on, I end up adjusting all the measurements anyways, kind of on the fly. But then you want to use some baking powder, not baking soda. I know what you're thinking, baking soda. But now this is some magic powder, baking powder ting. So you're gonna want to maybe measure it. I got the finesse though. You can see the focus here, but I can just eyeball it. But you might want to measure. But you put a tablespoon of that. Then you're gonna add 1 cup of water and 1 cup of milk to a medium saucepan. So the milk and water is in a separate saucepan. You're gonna want to heat it up on the stove, but not too hot. You're gonna want to keep that dial about quarter turn, like me pulling up to Applebee's on a Saturday. Next, you're gonna add about a tablespoon each of sugar, salt, and butter. Again, keep an eye on this because you don't want it to get too hot because you're gonna use it for your active yeast. And if it's too hot, it's gonna kill the yeast and it won't activate that properly. So now you want to make a hole in your bowl, or a well if you will. And what I like to do is pour a little bit of that buttery sugar milk in there first, and then I add the yeast in it right away. And then what I'll do is I'll mini whip it so that it kind of like mixes up a little bit first, you know what I'm saying, and just gets like going. And then I'll add the rest of that buttery sugar milk up in there, you know. And then after that, it's pretty much just back to the basics, back to your mini wrist work, you know, where it all began, where it all started, what got you going. You want to see a bubble like this, and then you're gonna wait about 10 minutes. In that time, I chose to do some paperwork and prepare some vegetables for the savory dish. Always wash your vegetables, by the way, folks.
Fuck off, man!
Yeah, you never know who's like sneezing up on that stuff in the grocery store, like little kids wiping boogers on it and stuff. So I also want to get at a point that people always on the internet have this thing about chopping onions, some weird like techniques, and people always say like, bro, the right technique is just cut it, man. You need to cut it straight up. And if you want to peel an onion easily, just cut it, bro. Just fucking cut it. And then also I want to say though, make sure you wash it because we know onions have layers. So underneath all those layers is a bunch of funk and stuff. So after you cut your onions, just wash them again, you know? And then that way you have fresh, tasting, clean vegetables. It's not very complicated. So after you cut the ends off and cut it in half, peel it, wash it. You're gonna put them down, face down, so they're flat, and then you're gonna dice them up and put them in a little container and keep them off to the side. Next, you're gonna do the same thing with the green pepper. Wash it and just cut it along the sides like this. I find is the best way. It's very simple too. You just kind of carve around it and then slice out like the inside things. Just like slice them out, and then I'll just take the whole thing, the whole tray, to the sink, and I'll just like wash out all the seeds and all the insides too, you know. Just make sure it's all clean as well, you know. Keep your food clean, man. It's easy too. It's not even hard to wash it, but you're gonna want to do the same thing with these green peppers. Just dice them up and put them in the same container. Next, we're gonna get to the garlic.
I don't know why the garlic gets so fucking hype. Garlic gets the hype shit.
So you're gonna want to start by cutting off the ends of the garlic where all of the skin connects to, and then you crush them with your knife by putting your palm down on them, and then you can peel all of the skin off pretty easily after that. We're gonna keep this garlic separate from the onions and the green peppers because it cooks at a different pace. So when we fry up these vegetables, we're gonna cook the onion and the green pepper first, and then we'll add the garlic afterwards. I find that when chopping garlic, sometimes it's best to hit it from a few different angles.
You hear that, folks? It's time.
Alright, 10 minutes is up. Let's get back to this dough. So now you're gonna want to form the dough a bit with your hands. Start it off, and you might have to adjust. Like I said, your measurements might be off. So this is where I added some more to it. There's no need to knead it too much.
You don't need a sneeze.
Essentially, you just want to form it into a cohesive dough. So butter up your hands, and then you can just kind of pull it into itself, I guess, and just do that until it becomes cohesive. And then afterwards, you're going to want a warm towel, like a steam towel, and cover it over top of the bowl and let it sit for about 1 hour. In the meantime, you could do some knuckle push-ups or even maybe read an educational book. Personally, I chose to work on some of my original musical compositions.
Thank you. So, since it's Grandma Rose's recipe, I want to tell a quick story about my Grandma Rose. We were put into foster care when we were young, and then my grandparents took us in and they raised us for a good part of our childhood. Anyways, I want to tell you guys the story about how my grandmother taught me how to throw my first punch and actually was the cause of my first ever schoolyard fight. So the story starts out back when I was in grade 3. My only friend that I had in the whole world was my older cousin, Mike Langan, R.I.P. to him. But he was a few years older than me, so the way that our school worked is there was one side of the school was primary, so grades 1 to 3, you could only be on that side. The other school was intermediate, grades 4 to 6. And you weren't allowed to cross to either side. But since my cousin was my only friend, I would go play with him on the intermediate side. And there was like a group of older kids, grade 6 kids, that would always come and beef with me and they'd give me a hard time. So I really had nowhere to go. I had no friends at my age. And every time I would go over there, these kids would come and beef and give us a hard time and push us around and stuff. So one weekend, this was before my grandma had custody of us, there was a family barbecue, family cookout, and my grandma was getting loose. Back then, she used to get loose. Before she would like take care of us, she would like party and like she would have drinks and she would get a little wild. She was having a few pops, you know, she was on the sauce, and I was telling her about these bullies, these kids who were bullying me, and she told me like how to make a fist. I showed her like that they would punch me, whatever, and I made a fist, but I had my thumb like this when I made a fist. And so my grandma told me, look, boy, when you make a fist, you take your hand like this and you put your thumb over top of your fingers and you squeeze as hard as you can. And when he comes to confront you next time, you go straight to his nose and keep going to his nose until blood comes out. And when he sees blood, he's not gonna want to fight you no more. So, fast forward, come Monday, I'm at school. I go, I'm hanging out with my cousin on the intermediate side, on the big kid side, and lo and behold, here comes all these grade 6 kids, these older kids that come in to mess with me. And there was this one kid, I remember him. He was this curly headed fuck. He had this blonde curly hair, man. He was like the ringleader. I remember he like literally it was like an arranged thing. They had like the dude picked out who was gonna fight me and everything. And so they're like, you and you. And everybody just surrounded. I just remember all of a sudden I'm in a fight. So my kid ass, I just went to my instinct, listened to my grandma, and I remember going bang, bang, bang. Every time I would hit him though, it was in his eye. So every time I hit him, his eye would get bigger and bigger to the point where it started to look like a Frankenstein. And so I remember stopping in the fight and going, whoa, and being so shocked that his eye went like that I just walked away. And I remember walking away and like hearing like the bombs, when the bombs go off, it's like I remember hearing that sound. And I remember the teacher come and grab me, and it felt like a cartoon. And she was like blah 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 blah. I couldn't even understand what she was saying because I was so like shook. So they take us in, they interrogate us into the principal's office. And I remember they're like, so that kid has a shiner. Is there anything wrong with you? I remember being like, okay, I don't want to get in trouble. So I'm going to say like, yeah, my jaw is a little sore. I literally said that. My jaw is a little sore. So fast forward, I'm in suspension. He's in suspension. We're not allowed to go to the assemblies or to like go to class. We have to sit in the room locked up. So they have a big ass assembly at the school. All the kids in the school are brought to the gym and they have a big announcement. There was a fight in the schoolyard this week. And I wasn't allowed to go to the assembly because I was in suspension. So I asked my sister afterwards, I said, what did they say about me? And she said, they said there was a big fight in the school last week. And 2 kids were involved. And one kid had a big shiner. And the other kid's jaw was a little sore. I'm not even joking, bro. They quoted my interrogation. I said, my jaw is a little sore. And they quoted me directly. I laughed so hard, bro. I'll never forget that. But to be honest, though, my grandma regretted teaching me that, because after that, I became a demon. I started knocking out all the fucking kids. I started getting in little kid fights all the time. I was like Mike Tyson in the schoolyard for a little while. But yeah, my grandmother literally taught me how to fight, how to throw my first punch. But she regretted it though afterwards, because then she got custody of us like the next year. So then she would have to deal with me all the time. Love you, Grandma Rose.
Alright, now this is the final step in our process. You can see the dough has risen about 1.5 times. You're going to want to grease up a surface. I didn't really have anything, so I'm just using this really big Tupperware container. And I like to make the patties, if you will, the BANNOCK patties, I guess, big. I like big patties. That's how my grandma used to make them, so I'm trying to make them like she did. To be honest, I can't really make them like she did. The way I make them are like, I'm getting close, I feel like, but the way she would make them was like very fluffy and like lighter, I guess. And I ran out of space in the one Tupperware, so I started to use the lid as well. I mean, do what you gotta do, right? Next, you're gonna want to heat up some lard. This is pure lard. Use the whole brick. I don't know if you're vegetarian, use like corn oil, I guess. I don't know. You're gonna want to get this pretty hot though. You should set the dial to about medium high, like me at my nephew's Christmas recital. It also depends on what type of pot you're using. See what I did there? You could take a spoonful of the dough and just put like a little tester in there. You should hear it sizzle like this. Next, you're gonna want to grease your fingers up and make sure that they're like slick enough so that you can like get rid of the dough out of your hand, so that you don't like have it stick and splash oil. It's very important to be careful and splash it away from you. If it does splash, like make sure you lay it down away from you. Once it looks like fried chicken on one side, then it's good to flip. When it's done, put it on a wire rack to cool down, and then put it in a bowl and add some sugar. Some people like to put cinnamon and sugar, but this is how my grandma made it, so I'm gonna just put sugar for mine. It should sound like this when you shake it. Next, you're gonna want to cover it with a towel and set it aside, then repeat the process with the savory ones, but just don't add the sugar this time. Alright, let's start the savory ones now. We're gonna saute the vegetables. First, we're gonna start with the onions and green peppers. Once the onions are translucent, we're gonna add the garlic. And don't worry, we're gonna add some seasoning to this in just a minute. Next, we're gonna add the beef. This recipe calls for ground beef. If you're a vegetarian, just use like ground Pop-Tarts or something. I don't know. Now, more commonly, you'll see this served in the form of a taco, but today we're gonna be lazy and do sloppy joes. It's a little bit ghetto, but if you use your imagination and you really look close, it just might begin to look gourmet.
Yo, I just want to say, make sure you add spices to this mix when you do it. I'm not even going to tell you all the spices I'm putting in. I put lots of spices. I got like cayenne, I got chilies, I got herbs, I got salt, pepper. Like, all I'm saying, don't be shy with the spices. Put spices, but also don't put too much. Know your limit, play within it.
Next, we're gonna want to sauce it up, like me when I have to drive my nephews to soccer practice. Now, I almost thought that I had too much ingredients for my pan, but I just believed and put my faith in God, and it worked out. And we're gonna plate everything and we're gonna top it up. The savory dish is gonna get shredded cheese, and I decided to put Nutella on top of the sweet. And then it's time to get some money shots. I feel uncomfortable eating on camera, so I'm not gonna do that. But believe me when I tell you, these turned out fire. Probably the best ones that I've ever made. I don't know if I'm gonna keep doing this cooking show or not. I'm just kind of trying it out right now. It's a lot of work, but I decided if I get 50 likes on this video, then I'll do it again. So show some love, like, subscribe, whatever. Thank you. Bless.